The autumn rain pattered against the campus windows as Jennifer hurried toward the bank, clutching her scholarship check like a lifeline. Her threadbare jacket provided little protection against the downpour, but paying this month's rent mattered more than comfort. "Next in line," called the teller with practiced indifference as Jennifer approached the counter, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. She placed her precious check on the counter, calculating that after bills, she would have exactly $23.40 for groceries this week. Barely enough, but she had survived on less before. The transaction complete, Jennifer pushed through the glass doors into the drenching rain, her shoulders hunched against the relentless wind. The parking lot had emptied considerably during her 15 minutes inside, leaving only scattered cars beneath the dim streetlights. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows crawled past, its engine purring softly against the background noise of rainfall. Jennifer paid it little attention until it abruptly stopped beside the private school across the street, where a teenage girl in an expensive uniform waited, platinum blonde hair gleaming even in the dim afternoon light. Two men in dark suits emerged from the vehicle, moving with practiced efficiency toward the girl who looked up from her phone with mild annoyance. Her designer backpack hung carelessly over one shoulder, the logo of her elite academy emblazoned in gold thread that caught what little sunlight penetrated the clouds. The girl's expression shifted from irritation to fear in an instant, as one man grabbed her arm while the other scanned the surroundings with calculated precision. Her scream pierced the air briefly before being silenced by a hand clamped over her mouth, her expensive charm bracelet jangling as she struggled against her captors. Jennifer froze mid-step, her breath catching as the men forcefully dragged the struggling girl into the vehicle. The expensive watch on one kidnapper's wrist glinted beneath his sleeve, revealing a distinctive cobra tattoo curling around his forearm. Rain soaked through Jennifer's clothes as she stood paralyzed, her mind racing through possibilities. Walk away and pretend she saw nothing, or risk getting involved in something clearly dangerous. The choice vanished when the girl's eyes locked with hers across the distance, a desperate plea visible even through the sheets of falling rain. The SUV peeled away with a spray of water, but not before Jennifer memorized the partial license plate reflected in a puddle. Her hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone, fingers hovering over the emergency call button, before realizing that police response would take precious minutes that the girl might not have. A small white card lay forgotten on the wet pavement where the girl had been standing, carried by a rivulet of rainwater toward Jennifer's feet. She snatched it up, squinting at the embossed lettering that read, "Richard Mercer, Mercer Shipping Enterprises," alongside a private phone number printed in bold black digits. The card felt impossibly heavy in Jennifer's hand, as she realized it must belong to the girl's father. A quick internet search on her cracked phone screen confirmed her suspicions. Richard Mercer, shipping magnate with interests spanning the entire eastern seaboard, his stern face appearing in business magazines and charity gala photographs. Her finger hovered over her phone's keypad, as moral certainty battled with self-preservation. Calling this number could pull her into a world she'd spent her life avoiding. The rain continued its relentless assault, washing away any footprints that might have remained, as if urging her to simply walk away and forget what she'd witnessed. Something about the girl's eyes, the unmistakable terror Jennifer had seen in them, made the decision for her. She dialed the number with trembling fingers, ducking under the meager shelter of a nearby bus stop as she pressed the phone to her ear, heart hammering wildly against her ribs. "Mercer," answered a deep voice, the single word carrying the weight of authority and impatience in equal measure. Jennifer swallowed hard, realizing there was no way to soften what she was about to say, no gentle introduction to the news she carried. "Your daughter just got dragged into a black SUV outside Westridge Academy," Jennifer blurted, her voice steadier than she expected. "Two men, one with a cobra tattoo on his wrist, partial plate 4RK. I think she's been kidnapped." The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but felt eternal, broken only by the sound of Jennifer's own ragged breathing. When Richard Mercer spoke again, his voice had transformed into something cold and terrifying, the controlled fury of a predator preparing to hunt. "Don't move. Black Mercedes, 5 minutes," he commanded before the line went dead, leaving Jennifer staring at her phone in disbelief. She hadn't given her location, yet the certainty in his voice suggested he already knew exactly where she was standing. True to his word, a sleek black Mercedes with heavily tinted windows pulled to the curb precisely 5 minutes later. The rear door swung open automatically, revealing nothing of the interior, except impenetrable darkness that seemed to swallow the rainy afternoon light. Jennifer hesitated only a moment before sliding into the leather interior, the door closing behind her with the solid thunk of expensive engineering. Seated across from her was Richard Mercer, his features sharper and more imposing than any photograph had captured, tailored suit impeccable despite the hour, one hand resting on a polished walnut cane. "Tell me everything," he demanded without preamble, steel gray eyes assessing her with calculated precision. "Every detail, no matter how insignificant it might seem to you. It could mean the difference between my daughter coming home alive or not." Jennifer described the scene in precise detail. The cobra tattoo, the girl's uniform, the way she'd struggled, the color and make of the vehicle. With each word, Mercer's expression hardened further, the knuckles of his hand whitening around the head of his cane, while his other hand tapped commands into a sleek smartphone. "I recognize the tattoo," Mercer stated flatly, interrupting Jennifer's description. "Ramirez cartel, but they wouldn't dare move against me directly unless—" His voice trailed off, mind clearly racing through possibilities, calculations running behind eyes that had gone cold with fury. The car moved smoothly through traffic toward an unknown destination, wipers clearing sheets of rain from tinted windows as Jennifer shifted uncomfortably on the butter-soft leather. Every instinct screamed that she had stepped into a world where normal rules didn't apply, where power operated in shadows beyond ordinary citizens' understanding. "You're a student," Mercer observed, his attention returning to Jennifer with unsettling intensity. "Scholarship recipient at the state university, working 2 jobs to make ends meet, no family connections that would make you useful as leverage, which makes you the perfect witness, with nothing to gain by fabricating this story." Jennifer startled at his assessment, wondering how he could possibly know so much about her in the short time since their call. "I'm not making anything up. I saw what happened, and I'm just trying to help," she replied, meeting his gaze directly despite the fear prickling along her spine. "I believe you," Mercer said simply, surprising her with the first hint of humanity behind his cold facade. "And because you've helped me, I'll ensure your safety, but I need something more from you, something only you can provide." The car slowed to a stop outside an unassuming office building, its upper floors disappearing into low-hanging rain clouds. "The men who took my daughter will have seen your face," Mercer continued, his voice matter-of-fact. "Which means you're already involved, whether you want to be or not." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Jennifer asked, her stomach tightening with dread as the full implications of her good deed began to crystallize. She had stepped into something far larger and more dangerous than a simple kidnapping, if such a thing could ever be considered simple. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you that for the next 48 hours, you'll be working with me to find my daughter," Mercer stated with the confidence of a man unaccustomed to hearing the word no. "In return, I'll ensure your safety and compensate you for your time, enough to cover that student loan debt you're drowning in." The office building's mundane exterior gave no hint of what waited inside, as Jennifer followed Mercer through security doors that recognized his biometrics, with soft electronic chirps. Her rain-soaked clothes dripped onto polished marble floors, creating stark contrast with the immaculate surroundings. "Command center," Mercer announced as they entered a room humming with technology, wall-sized screens displaying maps, security footage, and scrolling data. Half a dozen people looked up at their entrance, expressions ranging from surprise to calculated neutrality, at the sight of Jennifer trailing behind their boss. A tall woman with cropped silver hair stepped forward, her tailored pantsuit and direct gaze marking her as someone accustomed to authority. "We've got 3 possible locations based on traffic cam footage following the SUV before it disappeared from the grid," she reported without preamble, nodding toward one of the screens where red dots pulsed on a city map. "Andrea, this is Jennifer, our witness," Mercer introduced briskly, gesturing toward a side room. "Get her dry clothes, and then I want her working with the facial recognition team to identify the second kidnapper. We already know Santos was driving based on the cobra tattoo." The next hour passed in a blur, as Jennifer found herself changed into borrowed clothes that fit surprisingly well, seated before screens showing enhanced images captured from security footage. She identified minute details about the second kidnapper that had registered in her memory, a distinctive scar along his jawline, the unusual shape of his signet ring. "That's Hector Vega," announced a young man behind multiple monitors, his fingers flying across keyboards as facial recognition software confirmed the match. "Former Special Forces, dishonorable discharge 3 years ago. Now runs security operations for the Ramirez organization." Richard paced the length of the command center, his cane tapping rhythmically against the floor as he processed this information. "The question isn't who took her, it's who ordered it." he mused aloud, his expression darkening as he turned to Jennifer. "Did you notice anything else? Anything at all about my daughter's demeanor before the kidnapping?" Jennifer closed her eyes, replaying the scene in her mind with painful clarity. She wasn't surprised to see the SUV. She realized suddenly, the detail emerging from her subconscious. She looked annoyed, like she was expecting someone else but recognized the vehicle. It wasn't until the men stepped out that she became afraid. A tense silence fell over the room as Mercer absorbed this information, his knuckles whitening around his cane. "She thought it was my car coming to pick her up," he said softly, his voice carrying the first tremor of genuine emotion Jennifer had heard, which means this was planned by someone who knows our routines, someone close. Andrea moved to a computer terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard as she accessed personnel files. "We need to lock down your inner circle immediately. Phone records, financial transactions, recent travel. Anyone with access to Charlotte's schedule is now suspect." "Charlotte," Jennifer whispered, finally knowing the name of the girl whose fate had become inexplicably entwined with her own. The name hung in the air, transforming from an abstract concept into a real person with hopes, dreams, and a father desperate to bring her home. The command center transformed as night fell, screens casting blue-white illumination across determined faces, while rain continued its assault against reinforced windows. Jennifer's university life felt like a distant memory as she accepted a steaming cup of coffee from Andrea, their unlikely alliance forged in crisis. "Phone records show Charlotte received 3 calls from a burner phone yesterday," reported a tech analyst, projecting the data onto the main screen. "Tower pings placed the caller within your corporate headquarters, Mr. Mercer. Definitely an inside job." Richard's jaw tightened visibly as he studied the list of employees with access to the executive floor. The betrayal clearly cut deep, his eyes narrowing as he gestured toward a man in the corner who had been silently monitoring security feeds since their arrival. "Pull up the personnel files for my executive team, starting with Paul Winters," he instructed, his voice dangerously quiet. 10 years as my right hand, godfather to Charlotte. He has unrestricted access to our family schedules and security protocols." Andrea placed a cautionary hand on Richard's arm, her expression grave in the blue light of the monitors. "We can't afford to move on assumptions. If we alert the wrong person, they might panic, and Charlotte could pay the price," she warned, years of experience evident in her measured tone. The sudden ping of an incoming message drew all eyes to the central screen where a video file appeared, its sender anonymous behind layers of encryption. Jennifer's breath caught as Richard nodded grimly for the technician to play it, the room falling into tense silence. Charlotte appeared on screen, bound to a chair in a nondescript room with concrete walls, her school uniform torn at the sleeve, but her expression defiant, despite the fear evident in her eyes. "Proof of life," announced a distorted voice off camera. 20 million in unmarked cryptocurrency by dawn, or next time you'll receive her finger instead of a video." The message ended abruptly, leaving behind a crushing silence, broken only by the soft beeping of equipment and Richard's measured breathing, as he visibly fought to maintain composure. "Trace it," he commanded unnecessarily, as technicians were already working to pinpoint the video's origin. "The demand is a distraction," Jennifer said suddenly, all eyes turning toward her in surprise. "If this were just about money, they wouldn't have risked taking her in broad daylight with witnesses. Someone's trying to manipulate you into making a mistake." Richard studied her with new appreciation, his calculating gaze softening fractionally. "The student sees what my security team missed," he acknowledged with a tight nod. "This isn't ransom. It's misdirection while something larger plays out." The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, admitting a breathless analyst clutching a tablet. "Sir, there's unusual activity at the Port Authority terminal. 3 of your shipping containers were rerouted this afternoon without proper authorization. Documentation falsified under your digital signature. The kidnapping is cover for a theft," Richard concluded, the pieces falling into place as he gestured toward the wall-sized map of the city. "They need me distracted, focused on Charlotte while they move whatever's in those containers, which means we need to track both simultaneously." Jennifer found herself assigned to a team analyzing the video for environmental clues, while Richard conferred intensely with his security detail. Her academic training in environmental science proved unexpectedly valuable as she identified the distinctive algae pattern on a partially visible window, a growth unique to the harbor district. "We've isolated 3 possible locations based on the algae formations and concrete construction," Jennifer reported, pointing to marked areas on the digital map. "All abandoned warehouses along the eastern harbor with matching architectural features visible in the video background." The night stretched onward with tense efficiency, satellite images and thermal scans narrowing their search as Jennifer fought exhaustion. She startled when Richard appeared silently beside her, offering another coffee and something she hadn't expected, a Kevlar vest that he placed carefully on the desk beside her. Dawn approached with gray tendrils of light seeping through rain-streaked windows, illuminating the command center where Richard stood before multiple screens, displaying surveillance feeds from the harbor district. His composed exterior showed cracks only in the tightness around his eyes, betraying hours without rest. "We've identified movement at Warehouse 3, announced the head of security, enlarging a thermal image showing several heat signatures inside the dilapidated structure. Consistent with hostage scenario, one stationary figure surrounded by multiple guards with established patrol patterns. Jennifer studied the building schematics that had been pulled from city records, her academic mind analyzing entry points and structural weaknesses. "The northern access has roof damage from last year's hurricane," she noted, pointing to stress fractures visible in the architectural plans. Richard's phone chimed with an incoming call, the display showing unknown number, as the room fell silent. He activated the speakerphone with a deliberate tap, his voice betraying nothing as he answered. "Mercer, your daughter cries in her sleep," came the distorted voice, cruel amusement evident despite electronic masking. "Wire the money within the hour, or I start sending her back to you piece by piece, beginning with those pretty fingers that play piano so beautifully." Rather than fear, cold calculation settled over Richard's features as he responded, "I need verification she's still alive before any transfer occurs." His hand signaled the tech team to continue tracing the call, while he kept the kidnapper engaged in negotiation. Charlotte appeared briefly on a video call, tear-stained but defiantly silent, before the kidnapper reclaimed the screen with a mocking smile, partially hidden behind a ski mask. "1 hour, Mercer. The account details have been sent to your encrypted server," he warned before disconnecting abruptly. "We have the location confirmed," announced Andrea, her silver hair catching the blue light of the monitors. "And we've identified our traitor. Paul Winters authorized the container transfers using your digital signature. His car was tracked to the harbor district 30 minutes ago." Richard's expression hardened to granite as surveillance footage showed his trusted right-hand man entering the warehouse, carrying a briefcase that likely contained the security codes for the diverted shipping containers. 10 years of loyalty? Bought for what price? He mused, his voice dangerously soft. Jennifer watched conflict play across Richard's face, the businessman calculating his options versus the father desperate to recover his daughter. "The containers," she ventured hesitantly. "What's in them that's worth kidnapping Charlotte over?" "Officially machine parts," Richard answered with grim precision, checking his watch as security personnel armed themselves efficiently around them. "Unofficially, enough untraceable pharmaceuticals to control the eastern seaboard market for a year. Paul's staging a coup with my own supply." The revelation hung in the air as Jennifer processed its implications, understanding dawning that Richard Mercer's shipping empire extended beyond legitimate commerce. His eyes met hers across the command center, acknowledging her discovery with neither apology nor shame. "You're free to walk away," Richard offered quietly, placing a key card and cash on the desk between them. "My driver will take you anywhere you want to go. Your student loans will be paid in full regardless. Your obligation ended when you made that call." Jennifer stared at the offered escape, considering the return to her ordinary life where rent was always late and dinner often consisted of ramen noodles. The ethical complexities swirled in her mind. Richard was clearly involved in illegal activities, yet his daughter remained an innocent victim. "Charlotte recognized me," she said finally, pushing the keycard back toward him. "If I leave now, she'll think I abandoned her, and I've never been one to leave things unfinished." The tactical team moved with practiced precision through pre-dawn shadows, their communication limited to hand signals as they approached the weathered warehouse from multiple angles. Jennifer remained with Richard in an unmarked van 2 blocks away, monitoring thermal imaging that tracked movement inside the target building. 7 armed guards, standard patrol rotation, Charlotte secured in what appears to be an office on the northeast corner, reported the team leader through encrypted comms. Winters is meeting with 2 additional subjects in the main floor area, appears to be discussing container manifests. Richard checked his watch, noting the kidnapper's deadline approaching in 17 minutes, as he reviewed the operation plan one final time. Team 1 secures Charlotte. Team 2 apprehends Winters and his associates. Priority is my daughter's safety above all else, he instructed, his voice leaving no room for misinterpretation. Jennifer studied the building schematic on her tablet, focusing on the damaged northern section she'd identified earlier. The structural compromise extends to the interior wall of that office, she observed, highlighting a critical weakness. Entry through that point would bypass the main guard positions. The observation earned her a measured nod from Richard, as he relayed the information to his team. Proceed on my mark, he instructed, waiting for confirmation that all units were in position, before giving the command that would determine his daughter's fate. The next 10 minutes unfolded with heart-stopping intensity, as thermal images showed the tactical team infiltrating through the compromise section Jennifer had identified. Each room cleared appeared in green on their monitoring screen, hostiles neutralized with non-lethal force whenever possible. Richard maintained remarkable composure until the moment his daughter's heat signature moved, indicating she was being freed from restraints. Only then did Jennifer notice the slight tremor in his hand as he gripped the edge of the monitoring station, the first genuine display of emotion she'd witnessed from him. Package secured, came the welcome confirmation through comms, accompanied by Charlotte's voice demanding to know what had taken them so long. Richard closed his eyes briefly at the sound, relief visible for just a moment, before his focus returned to the secondary objective. The confrontation in the main warehouse played out on their monitors, Paul Winter's face contorting with surprise as he found himself surrounded by Richard's security team. You weren't supposed to find her until after the shipment cleared customs, he snarled, reaching for a concealed weapon before being efficiently disarmed. Bring him to me, Richard instructed coldly, disconnecting the comlink as he turned to Jennifer. You should wait here. What happens next isn't something you need to witness. Jennifer met his gaze steadily, surprising herself with her response. I've seen this through from the beginning. I'll see it to the end, she stated firmly, recognizing a turning point in her understanding of herself and the complexities of justice. Dawn had fully broken by the time Charlotte was escorted to the van, her school uniform replaced with tactical gear several sizes too large, her face bearing a small cut above her eyebrow, but her posture defiant. She stopped short upon seeing Jennifer, recognition flashing across her features. You're the girl from the street, Charlotte stated, studying Jennifer with the same penetrating intensity her father possessed. You saw them take me and actually did something. Most people would have walked away and pretended they hadn't seen anything. Richard watched the interaction between them with carefully concealed interest, as security teams secured the perimeter, and police sirens wailed in the distance. Authorities have been provided with evidence of Paul's independent drug operation, he explained quietly to Jennifer. Nothing connects to my legitimate business. The betrayal clearly wounded Richard deeper than he would admit. Decades of friendship revealed as a calculated long game for power. Take Charlotte to the safe house, he instructed Andrea as Paul was brought before him, the traitor's expression alternating between defiance and fear. Jennifer stood witness to the confrontation, neither participating nor retreating, as Richard addressed his former right-hand man with deadly calm. You targeted my daughter to cover your theft, he stated, voice devoid of emotion as he rested both hands on his cane. That mistake will define the remainder of your considerably shortened life. The safe house revealed itself as a penthouse apartment overlooking the city skyline, its luxurious interior at odds with its defensive capabilities. Jennifer sat on a leather couch worth more than her entire student apartment, sipping hot tea as Charlotte emerged from a shower, her wet hair framing a face too young for the ordeal she'd endured. Do you attend state on academic scholarship? Charlotte asked without preamble, curling into an armchair opposite Jennifer with casual grace that belied her recent trauma. Dad mentioned you're studying environmental science. He was impressed by how you identified our location from algae formations. Jennifer nodded, surprised by the girl's composure and unexpected interest in her academic pursuits. Full scholarship, plus 2 jobs to cover rent and food, she admitted, the reality of her ordinary life feeling increasingly distant from this world of tactical teams and penthouses. Richard entered silently, his earlier ruthlessness replaced by gentle concern as he checked the small bandage above his daughter's eyebrow. The transformation was striking, the dangerous businessman yielding entirely to the protective father, his fingers briefly brushing Charlotte's hair with unmistakable tenderness. Paul has been dealt with, he stated simply, leaving the specifics unspoken as he turned to Jennifer with measured evaluation. The police have his confession regarding the kidnapping and theft, along with evidence implicating the Ramirez organization. Your name appears nowhere in official reports. Charlotte's gaze moved thoughtfully between her father and Jennifer, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth despite her exhaustion. You saved me twice today, she told Jennifer directly. Once when you called Dad, and again when you found me through science. Pretty badass for a scholarship student. Security teams maintained discreet positions throughout the building as Richard poured himself 2 fingers of amber whiskey, studying the cityscape through bulletproof glass. The Ramirez organization won't take this loss lightly, he observed, practical concerns replacing immediate crisis management. You need to disappear for a while, Richard concluded, turning back to face them with decision evident in his posture. Both of you. Charlotte's semester at Westridge is forfeit, and your university will receive notice of your temporary withdrawal due to a family emergency with full scholarship protection. Jennifer began to protest, calculating rapidly how missing classes would impact her graduation timeline, when Richard raised a hand to forestall her objections. You've seen too much, become involved too deeply. The Ramirez cartel doesn't forgive witnesses, especially ones who cost them millions in product and expose their operation. Morning sunlight illuminated Charlotte's determined expression as she leaned forward, fixing her father with a look that brooked no argument. I'm not hiding alone in some boring safe house in the middle of nowhere. If Jennifer's stuck with this situation because she helped me, then we're sticking together. Richard's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement as he regarded his daughter's steel will, so similar to his own. The countryside estate then, he conceded after a thoughtful pause. Remote enough for security, comfortable enough not to feel like punishment. You both leave tonight. What about my apartment, my things? Jennifer asked, practical concerns surfacing through her exhaustion. I can't just vanish without paying rent or collecting my textbooks and research notes. Andrea appeared at precisely that moment, holding a tablet displaying photographs of Jennifer's apartment building. Your lease has been paid through the end of the academic year. Essential belongings packed and en route to the estate, she reported efficiently, as though disappearing students was standard procedure. 3 months, Richard stated, making it clear this was a negotiation with firm parameters. The Ramirez situation will be neutralized by then. Charlotte can transfer to private tutoring for the remainder of the school year, and you can return to university with supplemental assistance to catch up on your coursework. The practical reality of her situation settled over Jennifer as security personnel discreetly packed overnight bags for their immediate departure. She had stepped into this world by choice when she dialed that number in the rain, and now found herself inexorably bound to the consequences of that decision. The countryside estate materialized from morning mist after a 3-hour drive, ancient oak trees lining the private road leading to a stone mansion that seemed to have grown organically from the rolling landscape. Jennifer gazed through the car window at manicured gardens giving way to wild forest beyond the property boundaries, isolation creating both sanctuary and prison. Dad inherited this place but never uses it, Charlotte explained, as security teams swept the perimeter before allowing them to exit the armored SUV. Mom loved it here, though. She redesigned the gardens and the east wing before she got sick. The interior revealed unexpected warmth, despite its grandeur. Polished hardwood floors, sunlight streaming through tall windows, and comfortable furnishings that invited relaxation rather than formality. Security personnel maintained a discreet presence throughout the sprawling property, their professionalism evident in how invisible they remained, while never leaving their protectees truly alone. 3 weeks passed in surprising comfort as Jennifer adapted to their gilded exile, converting a sunroom into a makeshift study where she continued her coursework online. Charlotte proved a surprisingly dedicated student once free from peer pressure, her intelligence finding focus in the private tutoring Richard had arranged. The daily video calls with Richard became routine, security updates delivered with business-like efficiency before Charlotte monopolized the conversation with teenage exuberance, gradually drawing out her father's rarely seen gentle humor. Jennifer often excused herself during these family moments, ignoring the curious way Richard's gaze followed her retreat. April sunshine warmed the garden terrace where Jennifer sat, reviewing research papers when her phone vibrated with a message that froze her blood. A simple text from an unknown number reading, "Found you witness," alongside a photo of the estate's main gate taken that morning. Security protocols activated with terrifying efficiency. When Jennifer alerted the team, Charlotte whisked to a panic room hidden behind the library's false wall, while armed personnel secured the perimeter. Jennifer found herself escorted to the same reinforced chamber, heart pounding as massive steel doors sealed them inside. Dad knew this might happen, Charlotte explained with unnerving calm as she accessed a computer terminal embedded in the wall. That's why he installed military-grade surveillance throughout the property. We can see everything while they see nothing. Multiple screens illuminated to display every angle of the estate, capturing 6 armed men approaching through the woods with tactical precision that suggested professional training. Jennifer recognized the cobra tattoo on one man's wrist, The same kidnapper from that rainy afternoon that now felt like a lifetime ago. Your father's security team is outnumbered, Jennifer observed tensely, watching the intruders disable the first layer of perimeter guards with non-lethal but efficient force. We need to call for backup or police intervention. Charlotte's fingers flew across the keyboard with surprising expertise, accessing systems Jennifer hadn't realized existed. Already done, but reinforcements are 20 minutes out, she replied, her composure remarkable for a teenager facing armed intruders. Dad built redundancies into everything. Watch. The estate's seemingly decorative water features suddenly pulsed with high-pressure jets, disorienting two attackers while automated defenses deployed from hidden compartments in the garden stonework. Jennifer watched in astonishment as the technological sophistication of Richard's security systems revealed itself, the beautiful estate transforming into a defensive fortress. He's here, Charlotte announced suddenly, pointing to a screen showing a helicopter approaching rapidly from the east, touching down on the estate's private landing pad. Richard emerged with tactical efficiency, accompanied by a small team of specialists who moved with the coordinated precision of military units. The confrontation unfolded across their surveillance screens like a chess match played at lethal stakes, Richard's team methodically neutralizing threats while protecting the house containing his daughter. Jennifer found herself holding Charlotte's hand as they watched Richard himself confront the leader, the man with the cobra tattoo who had started this chain of events. Your father moves like he's done this before, Jennifer observed quietly, as Richard disarmed his opponent with controlled violence that spoke of extensive training, his expensive suit incongruous with the efficient brutality of his movements. The final attacker fell just as police and federal agents swarmed the property, Richard standing amid the chaos with the composed authority of someone accustomed to controlling volatile situations. He looked directly at the nearest camera, nodding once to indicate the threat had ended. The panic room doors unsealed with a pneumatic hiss, revealing Richard standing in the library with his tie loosened and a small cut above his eyebrow, the only visible evidence of the confrontation. Charlotte launched herself into his arms with unrestrained relief, the composed teenager momentarily replaced by a daughter who had feared losing her father. The Ramirez organization has been dismantled, Richard explained. Once they were seated in the library, federal agents visible through windows as they processed evidence and secured the perimeter. Their leadership has been arrested, assets frozen. They no longer pose a threat to either of you. Jennifer listened as he detailed the coordinated operation that had unfolded across 3 states simultaneously, recognizing that Richard's influence extended far beyond ordinary business channels. The revelation should have disturbed her more than it did, her moral compass recalibrating to accommodate complicated truths about power and protection. What happens now? She asked, the practical question hanging between them as federal agents completed their work and departed, leaving the estate in relative peace as evening approached. Charlotte returns to school, and I go back to my apartment and pretend none of this happened. Richard studied her with that penetrating gaze that seemed to evaluate possibilities and outcomes with mathematical precision. That depends entirely on what you want, Jennifer, he answered, using her name with a warmth that hadn't been present in their earlier interactions. I want to finish my degree, she stated firmly, meeting his gaze without hesitation. But I also want to understand how you identified those algae formations so quickly, and how your security systems integrate environmental triggers into their defensive protocols. The library's warm lighting caught the amber flecks in Richard's eyes as he considered her request, his businessman's calculation visibly giving way to genuine respect. Jennifer had proven herself not merely useful, but insightful, bringing fresh perspective to problems his traditional security team approached with outdated methodologies. My interest in marine biology began after Charlotte's mother died, he admitted, vulnerability showing through his carefully constructed armor. Amanda was an environmental scientist before her illness. She would have appreciated your approach to the algae formations, and would likely have identified them even faster than you did. A smile transformed Richard's face, erasing years of carefully maintained distance as he recognized the genuine intellectual curiosity behind her question. My shipping company maintains extensive marine research facilities. Environmental science drives our operational security in ways most corporations haven't yet recognized. Charlotte watched their exchange with poorly disguised amusement, her intuitive understanding of interpersonal dynamics belying her youth. Dad needs someone who understands both security and environmental systems, she observed innocently. His last chief sustainability officer retired last month. The suggestion hung in the air as Richard's phone chimed with an incoming message. drawing his attention momentarily away from the conversation. "The federal task force needs my statement," he explained, rising with reluctance evident in his movements. "We'll continue this discussion over dinner." Summer arrived with gentle persistence, transforming the estate's gardens into vibrant displays that Jennifer cataloged with scientific precision as she completed her degree remotely. Charlotte thrived with specialized tutoring, her academic performance exceeding all expectations as she prepared for early university admission. Richard divided his time between business obligations in the city and weekends at the estate, the pattern shifting gradually until his presence became more consistent than his absence. Jennifer's research position within his company's environmental division provided legitimate cover for their evolving relationship, professional boundaries blurring with personal connection. "You've transformed this place," Richard observed one evening as they walked the garden paths, the setting sun casting golden light across roses Jennifer had coaxed back to health. "Charlotte tells me you've cataloged over 200 native species on the property." Jennifer smiled, recognizing the roundabout compliment in his observation. "The biodiversity was always here. I just helped restore the balance that had been disrupted," she explained, her academic knowledge finding practical application in nurturing the estate's natural systems. The university approved her dissertation with distinction, environmental remediation strategies developed at the estate, proving applicable to commercial shipping protocols worldwide. Richard attended her virtual graduation ceremony with unmistakable pride, Charlotte cheering enthusiastically as Jennifer's name was announced with highest honors. "I've received an interesting proposal," Jennifer mentioned casually that evening as they shared dinner on the terrace, Charlotte conspicuously absent, having claimed a sudden need to video chat with university friends. "The Environmental Protection Agency wants to implement my research methodologies across major shipping channels." Richard studied her expression carefully, understanding the unspoken question behind her statement. "And you're wondering if accepting would create complications for your position within my company," he concluded, setting aside his wine glass with deliberate care. "I'm wondering if it would create complications for us," Jennifer clarified directly, the months of carefully maintained professional boundaries finally addressed openly between them. "My work has ethical implications that extend beyond business interests. I've been redirecting my operations toward legitimate enterprise since Charlotte's kidnapping," Richard admitted, his transparency a gift she recognized as significant. "Your research provides the framework for that transition. I would never ask you to compromise your principles." Autumn returned, a year since that rainy day when Jennifer had witnessed a kidnapping and made a call that changed everything. The estate's trees blazed with color as she walked familiar paths, no longer a visitor, but someone who belonged among the ancient oaks and flowering gardens. Charlotte departed for university with enthusiastic independence. Her relationship with her father strengthened through shared crisis and recovery. She hugged Jennifer fiercely before leaving, whispering thanks for being the catalyst that had transformed their family dynamic. Richard found Jennifer in the garden at sunset, his approach deliberately audible to avoid startling her as she documented seasonal changes in her research journal. "The estate feels emptier without Charlotte's energy," he observed, settling beside her on the stone bench overlooking the valley below. "She'll be back for holidays," Jennifer reminded him, closing her journal as she turned to face the man who had moved from enigmatic employer to essential partner in her life. "And she's already texting about bringing friends for the winter break." Richard reached for her hand with the careful deliberation that characterized his most meaningful actions, certainty evident in the gentle strength of his grip. "I realized something when those men breached our security," he confessed quietly. "Not that I needed better protocols, but that I needed you here, not just for your expertise or for Charlotte, but for me." The setting sun painted the valley in hues of gold and crimson as Jennifer intertwined her fingers with his, the journey from rain-soaked witness to partner, complete in that simple gesture. "I'm not going anywhere," she promised. The unlikely family they had formed, becoming her most unexpected and valuable discovery. Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, as your support is important for me to continue creating content here.